Why the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge should be protected. On August 8th of 2020, it was announced that the last 5% of protected land in Alaska, along with its offshore oil deposits, would be open for drilling. This land is called the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, or the ANWR. The refuge is roughly 19 million acres worth of land on the coast of northeast Alaska that homes many indigenous people and extremely endangered and unique wildlife. Though this land is said to have the largest onshore and offshore oil reserves in America, do the benefits really outweigh the risks? The simple answer is no, but to elaborate, this puts not only the local wildlife at risk, but also the indigenous people and the global climate. Acknowledging the other side, obtaining the oil that lies within the refuge would result in a short-term economic boost for the United States. This would cause gas prices to be temporarily lowered, and it would make a decently significant amount of governmental profit. This may seem like a good thing, but in the long run, it's really just not worth it. You may say that the world's running low on natural gas anyways, and that this land will need to be drilled in the future, but that's simply not the case. The world may be running low on natural gas, but many large steps that are also very effective are being taken to keep drilling in protective places from becoming imperative. That being said, will lower gas prices and a governmental profit that will not affect the average person really be worth losing this beautiful land and all of these amazing people and animals that inhabit it? Indigenous people. According to the Department of Interior's Environmental Impact Statement, the taking over of an entire protected ecosystem for oil could only potentially harm the wildlife and locals. What they did not mention is that, according to many studies and statistics, and specifically scientificamerican.com, the addition of work camps in areas like this are directly related to the increase in cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. Long before the world called it the Arctic Refuge, this land was sacred for the native people, who still depend on it to this day for their way of life. They rely on the caribou and other wildlife for their clothing and food. Over the past 2 million years, though, the caribou have migrated primarily to the Arctic Refuge's coastal plain to live and breed. The indigenous people call the sacred area the place where life begins. With the opening and bidding on this land, though, the place where life begins could quickly become the place where life ends for thousands of animal and plant species, along with the population of native people. Regarding wildlife, thousands of species consider the ANWR their home. The coastline is the breeding ground for thousands of animals and is the primary home to many species such as musk oxen, wolves, migratory birds from all 50 states, and an unimaginable amount of others. Nobody's home should be taken away for another short-term benefit. The two species that would be affected the most and that are currently considered the poster children for preventing the drilling are the caribou and polar bears. The majority of the polar bear population is already in a devastating state. Many are starving, malnourished, and left without a home. Implementing drilling in the last 5% of the protected land would cause their main food source, seals, to be more scarce, and it would also hasten the climate crisis, causing more of the ice that homes polar bears to melt, giving them no shelter or place to hunt for their food. Caribou would also be severely harmed by this drilling, as they take almost complete refuge on the coast of the ANWR. Their home would be destroyed with pollution, forcing them away. They would have nowhere to turn, and their last untouched land would be gone, leaving them with a limited amount of resources, ultimately causing their population to take an extreme hit. In addition, as stated before, the native people rely almost completely on caribou for their clothing and food, and the loss of the caribou population would result in a major loss of the refuge's human population. What has been done already and what you can do to take action. An energy analyst with the financial services firm Raymond James said companies that were first highly likely to bid are now highly unlikely to bid, given the cost of exploring and drilling for oil, along with the potential damage to their reputations, given that 70% of Americans have now expressed that they believe that the refuge should be left alone. The growing movement has also caused major banks to refuse to finance drilling in the refuge. This proves that pressure campaigning by signing petitions and sending letters to leaders is really working. This refuge stands next to 24 million acres of land that's already open to energy development and drilling. For decades, the American public has agreed that the remaining coastal plain should be left in its natural state, and this belief has been supported by political actions by both parties until these past few months. This change in policy puts not only local wildlife at risk, but also the indigenous culture and the global climate at risk. Overall, nothing can truly justify the damage that would be done to the wildlife, indigenous people, and global climate by opening the ANWR to fossil fuel drilling.